Take a moment and imagine this. You're in a crowded place and you accidentally say the wrong word. For a second, it feels like time slows down. Your heart starts racing, you feel your face getting warm, and one thought takes over your mind. Everyone noticed. That thought feels so real that questioning it almost seems pointless. But this is exactly where we need to pause and ask a very simple question. Did everyone really notice? Or is this just what your brain is telling you? Because some experiences are lived long before they are named. Now let's give this feeling a name. In psychology, this is called the spotlight effect. It refers to our tendency to believe that other people notice us far more than they actually do. In other words, we assume that our small mistakes, awkward moments, or minor details about our appearance are being watched, judged, and remembered by everyone around us. This assumption often goes unquestioned, not because it's true, but because the emotion behind it is intense. Embarrassment, anxiety, and self-consciousness can be so strong that the thought feels like a fact rather than an interpretation. So why does this feeling feel so powerful? To understand that, we need to look at how the human mind works. Our brains experience the world from a single center, ourselves. Our emotions are vivid and immediate to us, so we unconsciously assume that others see us with the same clarity and intensity. But other people are not inside our minds. They are inside their own thoughts, their own worries, their own inner conversations. The problem is that the brain doesn't naturally account for this. Instead, it generalizes personal experience and reaches a quick conclusion. If this feels big to me, it must look big to everyone else. But here's where things get interesting. Because this isn't just a personal impression or a philosophical idea. This is where psychologists step in. Psychologist Thomas Gilovich, along with his colleagues, conducted a series of studies on the spotlight effect. In one well-known experiment, participants were asked to wear a t-shirt that was intentionally awkward and attention-grabbing. They were then placed in a room with other people. Afterward, the participants were asked a simple question. What percentage of people in the room do you think noticed your shirt? On average, participants estimated that about 50% of the room had noticed them. In other words, they believed that 1 out of every 2 people was paying attention to them. But when the researchers checked the actual numbers, the results told a very different story. Only about 20% of people had noticed the shirt at all. That means participants were overestimating how much attention they received by more than 2 times. The researchers' conclusion was clear and consistent. People systematically exaggerate how much others notice them. This isn't random, it's a predictable cognitive bias. So why does the brain exaggerate so strongly? One major reason is social anxiety and embarrassment. The brain treats social mistakes as potential threats. Humans are social beings, and the possibility of rejection or negative judgment feels serious at a neurological level. As a result, even small mistakes are magnified. Silence makes this even worse. When no one reacts, the brain often fills the gap with an assumption. They noticed, but they're not saying anything. In reality, silence usually means something much simpler. They didn't notice at all. This is why the spotlight effect shows up so clearly in everyday life. You worry all day about a small detail in your appearance. You reread a message over and over, convinced it sounded strange. You replay a minor mistake from a presentation for days. And yet the people around you either didn't notice, forgot within seconds, or were focused entirely on themselves. And here's the real twist. While you're busy thinking everyone is watching you, The person across from you is likely thinking the exact same thing about themselves. They're wondering how they look. They're worried about what they said. They're replaying their own mistakes. So what you really have is a room full of people who all believe they're being watched, while almost no one is actually watching anyone else. This leads to a simple but powerful truth. People don't think about you nearly as much as you think they do. Not because they don't care, but because they're too busy thinking about themselves. The spotlight effect doesn't disappear completely. It's part of being human. But the moment you recognize it, its power weakens. When the thought, "everyone is looking at me," appears, it helps to remember that this is a thought, not a fact. Instead of accepting it automatically, ask for evidence. Did anyone actually say something? Did it come up later? Or is it something only you have been replaying? Most of the time, the answer is simpler than it feels. What seems overwhelming in the moment often loses its weight when we look at it from a distance. Shifting your attention outward matters more than we realize. When your focus moves away from yourself and toward the situation, the conversation, or the task in front of you, the imaginary spotlight begins to fade. Not because you forced it to disappear, but because it was never really there to begin with. And perhaps most importantly, small mistakes are not failures. They are a natural part of being human. They are how learning happens, how conversations unfold, how real life actually works. Most of them pass unnoticed, and the few that are noticed are rarely remembered for long. So the next time you feel like you're standing under a spotlight in a crowded room, pause for a moment, take a breath, and remind yourself of this: there is no spotlight. This feeling is not a personal flaw. It's not a weakness in confidence or character. It's a shared human experience, one shaped by a mind that evolved to be alert, social, and self-aware. Your brain is simply doing what it has learned to do, placing you at the center of your own story. But habits of thought are not rules. They can be noticed, they can be questioned, and with time, they can lose their grip.